Bueller?
He's sick. My best friend's sister's boyfriend's brother's girlfriend heard from this guy who knows this kid is going with the girl who saw Ferris pass out at 31 Flavors last night. I guess it's pretty serious.
Thank you, Simone.
No problem whatsoever.
Bueller?
Welcome back to Thinking Critical. This is Wes. Normally we have Drew on for the comics aficionados, but I figured I would bring him back in after we recorded to talk about something else, something that's, well, we talk about it here on the channel. I wanted to go a little bit more in depth and kind of flesh out my reasonings for these 4 writing tropes killing modern comics, and I think have really hurt the art of storycraft within comic books. Obviously, with me is Drew from Comics Elite. How you doing, Drew?
Doing great, Wes. Great to be back. Great to be here. And fresh-faced. Yeah.
Absolutely. We were teasing you a little bit. Now, we're recording on Sunday, but this is going to come out on Tuesday. It's going to be new comic book day, especially for DC Comics fans with Lunar. And there's a new series coming out from Tom Taylor. Not the biggest fan of Tom Taylor now, but what he's done deceased in some of these Elseworlds kind of self-contained universes, Injustice comes to mind. I know a lot of people are enjoying Dark Ages right now, or Dark Age over at Marvel Comics. It feels like it's almost a different writer, and he's got a new series coming out at DC called The Dark Knights of Steel. I believe you guys have a store-exclusive variant?
Yes, we do. We have a store-exclusive variant by the wonderful, fantastic, beautiful, and lovely Miss Carla Cohen. Right here. She did this. Harley Quinn by Carla Cohen, Dark Knights of Steel #1. It's the trade dress. There's a virgin cover. And there is the black and white right there. Oh, minimalist color, color minimal right there.
Very nice. So what are the prints on these? So it's DC, so it's a minimum of like 3,000 on the trade dress?
Yeah, I think so. I think 3,000, 1,500, and 1,000, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think if you do the regular order, you can get the virgin cover for like an extra 1,000 or something like that. Yeah. The DC rules are funny. I don't know them as well as you guys do. And are these available for pre-order right now? If they go to the Comics Elite website?
Absolutely. Go to comicselitecomics.com. You can get those there right now. And we actually partnered with 616 Comics on this with John Matthew Leone. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
But also contributor on the channel, talked about the issues that you had with Penguin Random House. So if you want to support the 616 Comics or Comics Elite, go to the websites and pick up some of these wonderful comics, store exclusive covers for Dark Knights of Steel #1, which is destined to be the hottest comic of the week.
Yes, we did a little short video, like a non-spoiler review of it, and Sean, Kyle, and I said it's going to be hard to top this as our #1 pick.
All right, well, let's talk about something that's not quite so positive. I do a lot of retrospectives here on the channel. We do one a week. Really enjoy those, and it's always 3 to sometimes 6 issues, longer story arcs. But what you'll see a lot of times is there's like individual stories. They're very kinetic, fast paced. Some people might say they're too wordy. I personally don't have a problem with it because I feel like you get a lot of bang for your buck. And these are 4 of the tropes that I'm seeing in modern comics that make me want to go back and really encourage me to keep doing these retrospectives that I think are really holding back the storycraft and really aren't utilizing comic books to their most effective or highest level as far as execution. And Drew is a comic book writer, if you do not know this. He's done a few short stories. I think you have your first big crowdfunder coming up by the end of the year.
That is correct. In December, we will be launching it through Sean's publishing company, Merc Magazine, on Kickstarter. Title is Born of Blood. It is going to be a very fast-paced and kinetic, action-centered story. So there will be no decompression at all. None of these tropes at all will be in this comic.
And Drew does read pretty much every single comic book that's released every week. He and Sean do a video, and then we do the simulcast of the podcast if you just want the audio. So he knows a few things about comic book writing, and he certainly is reading a lot of modern comics. Yes. The first one I want to talk about, this is the one that I think is really plaguing the industry. I think it's more widespread than anything, and it is the decompressed storytelling where some people do it better than others. And obviously, I think a lot of people credit Brian Michael Bendis for the writing for the trades. I think we're well beyond writing for the trades at this point. We're writing for the omnibus. You can think of a writer like Scott Snyder, who I think does it better than most. If you go back and read, his Batman stuff and some of his other works, it might take him 9 full issues to tell one complete story. And it feels like a lot of people have taken notes from Bendis and Snyder and others, and we've got some really long story arcs that might take upwards of over a half a year to complete.
Yes, that is very true. And I've called, you got to it before I did with Bendis. I've referred to him as patient zero for the decompressed storytelling, because I've gone back to read his Daredevil. Because I remember at the time reading it in high school and thinking, oh, this is so cool. And reading it now, I'm reading it like, man, not a lot's happening in this issue, in this next issue, in this next issue. It's a long walk for a short drink of water.
Yeah, you get a lot of recap.
Yes.
Which I think is good. I think everybody's first comic book, every comic book could be their first. So you definitely want to catch readers up, in an exciting manner, but then move the story together. You don't want to just be lingering on plot lines that have already been, brought up in the story and maybe not resolved, but are ongoing. You don't want to just sit there forever. There's even, like the James Tynion Batman right now is really decompressed. It doesn't feel like there's a lot of action. It feels like you almost go through the same bit of the story multiple times. You go back to Joker War. Batman had to be saved by Harley Quinn 2 times within the first 3 or 4 issues, and then ends up being saved by Harley Quinn in the end. It's like, how many times can we do the same little bit?
That's very true. And what you just said about like 2 or 3 of the issues feeling absolutely the same, and it really what did happen in Fear State. The next issue of Batman was literally almost a word-for-word repeat of the previous
Fear
issue.
State Alpha. Yes.
Yes. I'm like, wait a minute. Did they seriously just type this comic twice? It was a load of crap. I could not believe that. And it's a shame that it's gotten to this in the mainstream action-centered superhero comics. I can understand decompressed storytelling in like slice of life comics, indie comics, where people are going to be sitting around more often. But when your comic is action-centered, it needs to be kinetic. When you have people sitting around talking and nothing is really progressing the plot, why am I reading this? Why am I spending $5 or more on this comic?
We can go to another Tynion book where he's doing Something Has Killed the Children. I think it works better there because, it isn't an action superhero story. It's kind of a horror-based story. Even there, you can kind of feel it. But here's where I want to, kind of hone in on why it's not using the medium to its fullest. These comics are periodic. They come out every single month. If you want to tell these really long, drawn-out stories, there's a medium for that. It's called a graphic novel. You could release these things in trades, and they read so much better. Yes. Like a lot of those Batman stories by Tynion, if you read them just in one shot, it's a pretty good story. But once you're reading it, in 6 parts, it really drags down the anticipation and the enjoyment of the story.
Yeah, and you feel like you just got bamboozled out of $5, reading this comic. When you read that, when you read so much of these as we do, it gets to the point like if you were actually buying these, you should. Really, outside of if you're a hardcore collector, just wait for the trade. There's no point in getting it. Just wait for the trade.
Yeah, because it ends up being a much more enjoyable read because that's really what the story that they're telling is formatted for. It's not really, as I said, utilizing the comic book, the periodic format where it's coming out as a monthly book.
And it's so funny when you go back and read comics from like the 80s and 90s, especially, someone like, let's say, for example, Chuck Dixon, when he was doing Nightfall, which is a terrific, it's a light year beyond.
That story is actually kind of hard to read as a trader and omnibus because it's so fast paced and it's so hard hitting.
Yes.
You're like, whoa, what's going on here?
Yeah. And I think
it would have been better to read as a periodic.
I think now, when you're reading it now, because we're so used to decompressed storytelling, it's like, oh my God, so much is just happening in this one issue. We're not used to that anymore. We're used to like maybe one thing happening in the plot, and that's it. It just shows you just how Bendis and his decompression has affected the market and readers.
Yeah, and a lot of new readers that come in, this is the style that they're used to. So you will get a lot of pushback if you say decompressed storytelling is hurting comic books. And I truly believe it is, but there's an entire generation of comic readers that came in and this was the normal style for them, and that is what they're used to.
It's a shame, it's like if they do come into our store, I'll tell them, I would tell them, hey, that is great in indie comics, slice of life comics, horror suspense comics, but when you're telling an action-centered kinetic story, it's going to damage it. It's going to hurt it.
Now, speaking of hurting stories, we'll talk about hurting characters here. This one really it comes on in Watchmen and The Dark Knight Returns. Is the character deconstruction. Obviously, the two masters are Alan Moore and Frank Miller. When you look over at his Daredevil run, really breaking a character down, bring him to his lowest point, and making the character build himself back up, a better version of what he was before.
Yes.
We don't get that so much in The Watchmen.
No, no.
That's just a deconstructed universe.
Yes.
But when it comes to the character deconstruction, you could do a lot of long-term damage as you're constantly making your character lose, or you're bringing them to their lowest point, but you forget to build them back up. You just kind of leave them there, and you say, hey, look, what a pathetic loser this hero has always been.
That is correct. You know, like you said, Alan Moore and Grant Morrison and Frank Miller are arguably the best at it. You know, Swamp Thing, Animal Man, Miracle Man, terrific. But like you said, they built them back up. They reconstructed them. That's the other half of the deconstruction there. The writers now, case in point, Tom King, are masters at tearing down characters and forgetting, or just saying, forget about rebuilding him. He's a depressed man like me. He's a broken man. I'm a broken man too.
Yeah, it's kind of strange because you think about, you know, Daredevil. His faith is obviously one of the core components of the character.
Bedrock.
So to break him down and make him question his faith is a big moment for the character. It's obviously happened quite a bit because the character's been around. But he has to realize his strength is in his faith as he builds himself back up, and that's still a key component. If you just break him down and make the character question his faith, and then he never rediscovers it, you forgot to end the story.
Can you imagine if Frank Miller had written Born Again, just where he's just broken down the entire time? It just ended with him there in the shelter and just said, I'm not getting back up. No, forget it. I'm laying here. I'm done. Can you imagine that? No.
Exactly. It's completely depressing is what it is.
Yeah.
And, you know, we see, Batman, we'll take the Tom King Batman. I think that was a good example as he's working up. And I think there was some character deconstruction along the way when the War of Jokes and Riddles, you see Bruce Wayne as a young Batman choose a side and side with a villain completely against character, like breaks down the moral fiber of who he is.
And let someone get shot in a church and does not do anything.
Absolutely. Lets Joker shoot a woman on her wedding day in the face, does nothing to it, or nothing to stop Joker, or there's no repercussions for it. He ends up basically looking like a bigger loser. We get to the wedding that never happened. He gets left at the altar, which I think a lot of people kind of saw coming, although DC Comics didn't want you to think that. Yeah. And then he's just like a broken man. And he never fixes himself. He's sitting in Hawaii with his girlfriend while he sends his son in to watch their father figure get murdered, as the entire city's been taken over, because he's so mopey and worried about Selena Kyle that he's forgotten his oath to protect Gotham from all the scum of the earth that are there. And then you finally get to the end. You're like, well, he's finally going to win. Well, technically, you know, the bad guy lost, but it wasn't because of Batman. It was because of Catwoman. She's the one that kicked the crap out of Bane and whatnot. And as soon as Batman put one finger on Bane, he just threw him against the wall.
Yeah, it's amazing reading that latter half of his Batman run and just seeing just how utterly weak and depressed Batman is, and on top of that, slapping Robin across the face, saying that was a hidden sign. It's like, oh, where it's a hidden signal. It's like, what? Who thinks
slap
of that?
Signals, yes.
Yeah, it just slap signal. It boggles the mind how DC thought, yeah, this is gonna be better than Nightfall. This is gonna be better than Cataclysm, better than No Man's Land. It's like, no, this is terrible. And the only reason why this is selling is because of the variant covers. That is it.
Well, and eventually it stopped selling. That's obviously why they jettisoned them early.
Yeah. You got something like Immortal Hulk coming along that's selling like gangbusters. You have a very compelling, interesting, horror-centered story. Yeah, that's what's going to happen.
And then there's another character I remember in Strange Adventures where they did the deconstruction on Mr. Terrific, where he's having a drink with Strange's wife, and he's talking about how when his wife died in a car accident, she was with child, and he was relieved because he wasn't ready to be a dad or whatever, and he felt a sense of relief when his wife and baby died. That's character deconstruction. And a lot of people are like, you're wrong, Wes, because by the end of this, you're going to find out from Terrific's mouth that he lied, that he just did that so he could kind of get her guard down so she would open up to him. Never addressed it again. That's just part of the character's history now.
Yes, now it is. And any time that's brought up now, it boils my blood, because I was reading Mr. Terrific in the JSA Jeff Johns run for years. He was a great character. And then this happens, and he just completely, like you said, deconstructed, not just deconstructed, he destroyed the character with that.
Yeah, in a couple of pages.
Yes, that's all it took. Yeah, a couple lines of dialogue, and that was it. And he is the master of he is the WMD of character deconstruction. Obviously,
Bendis has a bit of that within his writing, not to the degree of King, but it's really prevalent. And it makes sense when you think about the comic books that would have been really influential to the writers that we have nowadays. It would have been Watchmen. It would have been The Dark Knight Returns. It probably was Born Again. But they forgot, they forgot to take all the lessons from the stories, specifically, that Daredevil run from Frank Miller, which I think is, the best character deconstruction story ever told in comic books, is that you have to do that final act where you build the character up better than he was before. And it turns out, yes, he had to question who he was or what he was doing, but in the end, he realized he was doing the right thing all along, and he's more fortified.
And I just don't get it, whether they're not interested in telling that story, they don't know how to tell that story. It's got to be both. It's got to be a factor of both. Like, they just don't want to, or just not interested in doing it. They just want to.
I think they thought the compelling part of the story was the deconstruction, and they thought the reconstruction was just kind of throwaway on the end. So why even do it?
Maybe it's too hard for him. Maybe it's just too hard. It's like, I don't know where to start with this. I don't know how to build myself back up. So why should I build him back up?
Perhaps. So another trope that we're seeing a lot, the one big trope that was a big money maker there for a while was character deaths. Let's kill everybody, and then we'll bring them back, a year later, sometimes less than that. And now we've moved on past character deaths because they don't move units. We've been passing the mantle on for 10 years now. They're constantly passing these superhero mantles. And again, it's learning the wrong lessons. There have been successful times when characters moved into another already established mantle. You can think of Wally West when he moved in for Barry Allen after he died in the Crisis. You can think of when Hal Jordan becomes Parallax, saves the Earth, redeeming himself after he turned evil. And you get Kyle Rayner coming up as the new Green Lantern, really establishing himself. But now it's just, you're the new this, you're the new that. And they don't give the characters time really with the mantle to step up into it and for people to accept them on that one, because everything's got to be, everything's got to be, the fastest acceptance by the audience, period. If they don't accept it immediately, you got to go back to what you knew before, because it's all just marketing ploy at this point. You just do these mantle passings so you can say there's a new Daredevil, there's a new Iron Fist, there's a new Batman, there's a new Superman. And we're just churning through all these characters. And at this point, it's so lame. And you can see through it a mile away, whether it's just, initially as a ploy. And now a lot of times it's for some type of diversity change within the character.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, there are great ways to do. You can do this successfully. Absolutely, you can. Like I said, Nightfall was a great example of that. Batman passed it off to the wrong person. He had to fight his way back to earn it and to get it back. But yeah,
and it's clear that Chuck Dixon was trying to make you appreciate Bruce Wayne.
Yes,
through the actions of Azrael, that he was a pretender. He was not worthy of the mantle.
Yes, correct. And another factor now is, like, with these characters inheriting the mantles, a lot of them aren't struggling like characters like Kyle or Wally did. A lot of them aren't really failing, because Kyle and Wally, they're great, but they were relatable because they failed but learned from those failures and got better over time, and we grew with them over time. But a lot of these characters, they're perfect in every way, not really struggling, and it's like, where's the struggle here? Why should I be interested in this character if there's no real struggle?
Or the appreciation for the mantle that you're inheriting. Like, oh my goodness, think about the responsibility that I have now. Think about the legacy that's been handed down to me, or that I've taken up. You look at
that legacy now, like that word, it's like they're just forgetting that. It's like, no, I'm it now. It's like, deal with it. And it's like
no. Kate Bishop with Hawkeye in the comic book just goes and takes it.
Yeah.
Well, he's not here anymore. I'm an archer.
I still don't understand the fascination with that character at all. I'm sorry. I've tried reading the West Coast Avengers by Matt Fraction with her and Hawkeye. I'm like, but I just don't get it. I just don't find her interesting. She's a pill. I don't get it.
At this point, it's one of the easiest ways to make customers or comic fans hate a character. Give them something they didn't earn, and then make them like self-righteous about it.
Yes, Riri Williams. That's case in point number one right there. When Bendis introduced her, she just more or less took the role. Then she took over a country, I believe, in one of the stories, and just deal with it. I'm Iron Man. Like, no, you didn't really earn this. You stole the armor and took over a country. I don't really see why I should root for you as a hero. And
you got a very similar backstory for Teen Lantern. Never given the ring, was not inherited from the Guardians of the Oa, or wasn't selected by the Guardians of Oa, created a gauntlet and hacked into the Central Power Battery and stole the power.
Yeah,
am I supposed to get behind that hero?
Apparently it's the fast track to success. You know, that's what people like. I guess everyone wants, everyone likes the fast track to success. Not trying for it, not earning for it, not working for it. Maybe it's a reflection of today's culture. I don't know, the youth today, just not really.
Yeah, the fast track. I hear people are wanting, they want signing bonuses to work at McDonald's. It is a different culture. And a lot of these things probably are really geared towards a different audience, but we're still here. I don't look old because I'm not old. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Drew doesn't look old either because he's not old. We're not all, silverbacks just hanging on here. A lot of us have 20, 30, 40 years of more reading of comic books to go.
Yeah. Absolutely. Understanding storytelling, how it works, progressions of a story, understanding writing a character, making them a compelling character, making us understand, relate, grow, struggle, have every broad range of emotion with the character. And a lot of these new characters, we're not getting that at all.
And then you think of like Batman, you mentioned Azrael earlier and how he was a pretender and it didn't work. And that was by design.
Yes.
But if Batman left tomorrow, there are no less than 4 characters that people would accept stepping up into the mantle of Batman because they've been established. We've seen their trials and tribulations, and they've been proven worthy in one way or the other.
Yeah. So it would say Dick Grayson. Yeah.
Tim Drake would be the ideal replacement of Bruce Wayne because he's the most like him and the most detective-minded. Dick Grayson would be a natural replacement because he has a lot of the virtues of Batman, but really virtuous as a virtuous character, transcends Batman. He's probably more virtuous than Bruce Wayne. He certainly has all the fighting capabilities. Then you could have a Damian Wayne, the son of Batman, that you could see him moving up to the legacy. Now you'd expect a crazier Batman. Is he going to make it or is he going to turn evil kind of thing? But, you have these characters established that would be ready to walk into the mantle because they've been around for a while. They've had trials and tribulations and people have accepted them.
See, I just thought of an interesting story right here. We've got Jace Fox, the next Batman, and we forget, we got him flying around somewhere. And it's like, why not make him like, let's make him the next Batman, but do it like a Nightfall type thing where he does become the next Batman, but he does go over the edge. He does go crazy. And Bruce or Dick or whatever, they have to come back, and just fight it back from him. Something like that.
Well, I mean, you had Luke Fox that was Batwing. There was a good version of that character, especially during the New 52. Yeah. That was kind of already established that you could have taken up and continue to work with rather than starting from scratch with Chase. I don't get it.
No, neither do I. Just a case of having your cake and eating it too, I believe.
Yeah, everybody wants to, create the new character, the new version of Batman or whatever, and it's like, why would there be a new Batman when there are so many people that would be ready to ascend to the mantle?
Yeah, I don't think they really, the writer, I mean, no disrespect to John Ridley, but I don't think he really understood like how many characters there are in that family who are in a position to take that mantle before your new character can.
Well, and he's also stealing the tech from his father and stuff too. It's not like he created any of it.
Yeah, and we don't even, and I brought it up in a chat like months ago, like, why is he even Batman in the first place?
I haven't figured that part out.
Yeah.
I know he has training. I know he stole the technology, but he'll tell you he's better than Bruce.
Yeah.
At least he did in the last issue.
Yeah.
So The last trope that I think is really killing comic books, this is another Tom King thing. We could also put V.I. Allen and Brian Michael Bendis would be on this one, is the self-insert characters. How many times can we see the lead hero character digressed down to the level of Tom King? And, with some of the issues that apparently he might be going through, that he keeps channeling into his characters like Mr. Miracle, Mr. Terrific, Batman. We're seeing it obviously continue to Batman, Catwoman, Strange Adventures, some of those stories. When you see VIL, a lot of the times when they create a new story, you're going to get a new character that's non-binary or trans. You had an entire series of Children of the Atom within the X-Men. You look at Brian Michael Bendis, not a self-insert, but he seems to
insert his kids
his kids as the new heroes. Riri Williams, Teen Lantern. We've also got Naomi as well,
and Miles.
Sometimes it's not best to write yourself as a hero because you might be so invested in yourself that you might not see what the hero represents clearly, and you might not want him to ever lose. Or maybe even when they're being crazy, you can't even understand that they're out of bounds, and your story kind of ends up falling apart. Plus, it gets really tiresome when you read the same thing over and over.
Exactly. And that's why, I need to make a bingo board. I think I have a bingo board. I'm going to make it for Sean and I. It's going to be the Vida Ayala bingo board. Like her tropes all on a bingo board, and probably five of the spots would be the same item. It's like self-insert LGBT character, mocking a straight character. It's only a matter of time before you just see it. It's like, wait for it. Oh, there it is. Where's the next one? Wait for it. Oh, there it is. They're not original. They're not creative. It's hack and lazy writing. I want to say she's a creative writer, but I just don't see it. I don't see any creativity out of her at all. There's
a short story in Wonder Woman 750 that Vita wrote. I believe it's with Silver Swan. I might have that one wrong. But it's fantastic. I gave it 5 stars as far as a short story. Every page is great. Tells a wonderful story. You get a beginning, middle, and end in about 10 pages. It was fantastically realized. And that's the best that I've seen. But I don't see that in the ongoings or miniseries that Vita gets.
No, none of it. It's just, what to expect. You try not to think about it, but you already know this is what's going to happen. And more often than not, they do happen. And that's what happened in the Wonder Woman book. It's like, oh, there it is right there. It just, only a matter of time.
Yeah, and you go with like Tom King. I was talking about it in a video recently. It's like within the first 5 issues, normally around 3 to 5, there's your first big character deconstruction, of himself, basically. Tears himself down. And then there's the big one at the end where he really messes things up. And it becomes so predictable. It's like paint by, well, it's not the very end. It's normally issue 11. And then you get the fallout in issue 12. But it's paint by numbers at this point. You can't keep inserting the same characters, especially if they're yourself, because you might not also be that interesting.
Yeah, and so it really makes me want to talk to the fans of these, because there are Tom King fans who love the stuff. I'm just like, I want to tell them, like, how do you not see this stuff coming? How at this point, it's almost every story has been the exact same. And spoiler alert, I already read A Human Target, and it's almost the same thing. And it's just like, I don't understand how you can find enjoyment out of a story. You already know what's going to happen.
And when I was a kid, I remember we got a cassette tape of a VHS of Home Alone from McDonald's. Remember, you buy something and for $3 you get a copy of Home Alone. And I remember my little brother watching that movie about 50 times in a row. So people just like to watch the same thing over and over again.
And hey, you know what? So do I.
Hey, Adam Sandler movies were good.
They're fun.
Talk about a self-insert character. Every man baby that finally discovers it's time to grow up.
But the thing with those is that they're enjoyable. They have fun characters, fun, relatable characters.
Up until Mr. Deeds, and then it's the same thing. Once eventually the character gets old and stale, and you want something different.
Yes,
and he continued to make the character, and I'd stop watching personally.
And the problem why these Tom King stories, a lot of them aren't rereadable, is because they're so depressing. They're not entertaining. They don't have someone like a Happy Gilmore or Billy Madison there lighting up the screen, lighting up the page.
They are absolutely depressing stories. It's like reading Requiem for a Dream.
Yeah.
Why would I want to do this?
Yeah. And sometimes you have writers inserting their own politics into a story, like Tom Taylor.
You definitely get the propaganda stuff is pretty widespread. I don't know that we can kill that trope. Remember, Drew, comics have always been politics.
Yeah, they've always been political. Yes.
There's certainly been social commentary and political elements within comics, but they've never really overtaken the entire industry. But that's another video. That'd be like another 30 minutes. So
yeah,
those are just four tropes that I really think are destroying modern comic books. They're definitely going to people disagree with us. I'd definitely like to hear from them in the comments section. And I want to say thank you very much, Drew from Comics Elite. Do you have any final words?
Please think critically when you're reading your comics, guys. Please. That's all I ask.